Provocation is going to really center on is a solution that I'm proposing to the field of fashion studies and just to the entire field of fashion education. So I think that this conversation is relevant more than ever. I think for those of us who are racialized, there's sort of this head scratching moment of just how this is suddenly as relevant as it is now, when, this has been sort of our lived experience, this experience of being underrepresented or misrepresented for as long as we can remember. So thinking about, especially now as an American scholar who is now in Canada at Ryerson University, and also, the date of this event today, in the United States, just yesterday, for people who identify as Black, we had this devastating news of a woman named Breonna Taylor who was killed in her home months ago, and that the final judgment or assessment of the situation was that even though she was unarmed, it was still justified. And what I'm getting at is we can't sort of detach the political climate and the things that for racialized individuals, what they're dealing with in their lived experience can be detached from the work that we're doing in our respective fields, such as fashion in my case. So when I come into the classroom and talk to the students, I teach a class called Fashion Theory. I had to open up with my students yesterday and let them know, I'm feeling kind of down. I have to reveal that to the students and let them know why. And it was an eye-opening experience. There was a student who had revealed, and really in the innocence of her ignorance, she said, this class helped me realize that as a young white woman, when I wear a hoodie or kind of loose, quote unquote, streetwear clothing, I didn't realize that there's Black people who can wear the same thing and be criminalized. And for some people in this room, you might think, well, of course, but for others, this is an eye-opening moment. So in this racial reckoning that we're experiencing, it was really just sort of a coincidence that I had relaunched my digital humanities project, the Fashion and Race Database. I founded this database actually in 2017, and 2016, 2017. And the reason that I had created it was this humble website that I had created when I was teaching. I was a part-time lecturer at Parsons School of Design and a visiting assistant professor at Pratt Institute in New York. And I had created this sort of glorified bibliography onto a website or syllabus as a response to the dearth of resources, or at least the organization of resources that we could find in the fashion libraries when it comes to the issues of race, racism, ethnic studies, cultural studies, non-Western fashion, anything that has been othered throughout time. It was certainly out there. You could find these things about representation, like through Stuart Hall, in cultural studies, or you can find work on African-American dress in African-American studies, or the issues of dress and criminalization in critical race studies. And even the dress practices of people who had been formerly enslaved by people like Dr. Monica Miller in literature or in English studies. So what I sought to do in creating the Fashion and Race Database was collecting all of these sort of disparate resources from all over in different fields and disciplines and concentrating them into one space in service of students, tutors, professors, lecturers, researchers, adjunct faculty, practitioners, all in one space. And not only that, creating a proposed framework of what do we do with all of this? Now that I've surveyed all of the information that I can find, how can we sort of structure this into a framework that can sort of be situated in fashion studies? So when we talk about the body, in all of the different ways that we do in fashion studies? How can we integrate also the racialized body there? When we talk about beauty ideals and Western beauty ideals or the Western beauty canon, how can we situate these sort of how can we situate the racialized body in there? Where does this come from? How can we historicize these Western beauty ideals and make sense of this caste system that has existed for centuries, that has deemed anything outside of the Western beauty canon as inferior? So things like that, and of course, cultural appropriation or misappropriation, cultural borrowing, all of these things, the practice of extraction, which one could argue is a little different from just some innocent inspiration, quote unquote, or cross-pollination for the creative genius. So, the list goes on, but in the past few years, since 2016, I have sought to create a framework of how we can make sense of all of these sources and how I can use my own classical training in fashion studies to then also integrate the work that I found in other fields to help also address this glaring problem that we have of racism and racial oppression, which still exists today. So that was sort of my goal in creating the Fashion Race database. So the Fashion Race database, in case anyone hasn't seen it already, you can find it by going to fashionandrace.org. So this summer, thanks to the funding, some startup funding that I received from Ryerson University, the institution where I am now, I was able to hire a web developer and really take this kind of proposed syllabus and framework to the next level. And essentially, we've kind of created this library of everything that you could possibly need to find when it comes to non-Western fashion, challenging the Western gaze in fashion, exhibitions, books, articles, podcast episodes. But one thing, as I'm kind of running out of time here, I want to skip down and just explain the framework that I have set up for the database. So when you visit the website, you can see how it's laid out and what my strategy is in doing this. So we have 6 sections, which you can find on the database. The heart of it is the library. The library contains books, scholarly articles, popular articles, podcast episodes, exhibitions, all there in terms of fashion outside of the Western lens, non-Western fashion, things like that. And Objects That Matter is a column that I created where it is a profile of an object. So it's either a garment, it could be a magazine cover, it could be an accessory that belongs to a non-Western group of people, or it has been designed with racist intent. We give you a profile of how it is supposed to be worn or what its original context was. And then when you scroll down to the bottom, we have examples of how it has been appropriated, misappropriated, or how it has been used in a honorable way, in a flattering or respectful, non-harmful way. And then profiles is similar to Objects That Matter, where we're going to start publishing profiles of figures who have fallen outside of the canon of fashion history. And then Essays and Opinion I'm quite excited about because it's going to invite research pieces, essays, long and short, and even family photo albums from BIPOC individuals, Black, people who identify as Black, Indigenous, Asian. So they'll get to write their pieces there and we'll publish that. And then the directory also has a list of additional resources. It kind of gives a nod to other organizations or sites that are doing this work with us, such as the organization Decolonizing Design. And then the calendar, self-explanatory. We have calls for papers, exhibitions, events that are happening that all have to do with figures or events that are that fall outside of the Western lens or are celebrating BIPOC individuals or deal with issues related to race, systemic oppression, and things like that.